Next, from Auburn, Illinois, we talk one-on-one with Gary Niemeyer, chairman of the National Corn Growers Association. We talk about the challenges of the ongoing drought on Illinois agriculture and the need for a national farm bill. This runs about 25 minutes.
Gary Niemeyer, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel.
Happy to be here, Terry. This is a really exciting opportunity for us to get the information about Illinois agriculture to our consumers.
You know, we're out here on your farm, in your farm shed, and you have quite a big tractor behind you, which reminds us all that what a huge investment farming is these days. It's amazing to think that about 100 years ago, something like half the people, if I recall, 46% or so of the Americans worked on the farm, and today it's, what, approximately 2% of Americans work on farms?
About 1.5%, that's absolutely true. And just like you said, we have substituted capital for labor.
And so the net effect is that you have individuals where we used to say 40 acres and a mule. Now one individual, such as yourself, and I know you have people working with you, but will farm thousands of acres. What is in Illinois, first of all, just kind of a typical, if there is a typical size grain farm?
Well, that's been all over the place. We farm 2,000 acres, which is relatively small in these days terms. Have neighbors that farm 10, 15, even up to 50,000 acres. So we're utilizing larger machinery to cover more acres with less manpower.
When last we spoke, one of the primary issues that we were talking about was the ongoing drought, which is still ongoing, but it was lowering the Mississippi water levels, and you were very concerned about there being a halt to the barge traffic on the Mississippi River, which, as I recall, your number is something like 60% of all of our grain, all of our corn that's grown, goes down the Mississippi.
Right.
Update us, if you would, what's happened on that issue?
Well, we've been very fortunate. The Army Corps of Engineers actually came through, stepped the time frame up, and started in mid-December to eliminate the rock pinnacles that were curtailing our movement of shipment near Thebes, Illinois. That is halfway between St. Louis and Cairo, Illinois, on the Mississippi River. They had to use dynamite as well as backhoes to get those rock pinnacles out of the river to maintain a 9-foot draft so that we could move our barge traffic up and down without scraping on the bottom of the river.
And so, all right, so that's done, and are we out of the woods then, or is there still a concern relative to the fact that we still have something like, what is it, 8 inches below normal rainfall?
That's kind of where we are right now. According to the Army Corps of Engineers, we were good till the 1st of April, and they were hoping for a rain in between. So we're really dependent upon rain for not only moving our barge traffic, but also growing a good crop in 2013.
Obviously, no one knows at this point if the rains will come in the spring, as we hope they will, and if they do, then you're going to have a good crop, a good planting in the spring, and that the Mississippi will have a sufficient water for moving barge traffic. If, on the other hand, we have a continuation in 2013 as we had in the drought in 2012, at what point would the situation get to be desperate?
Well, being a farmer, we're kind of eternal optimists, you might say, and we will be okay up till about the 1st of June, but we're going to really have to have some rain to finish growing this season's crops off because we've continually degraded. Last fall, we were very fortunate to catch a rain out of Isaac at the very end of the season, and it really helped turn the soybean crop around dramatically here in the state of Illinois. It really didn't do that much for the corn, but I don't know, I have had neighbors that have been putting tile in as deep as 9 foot, and there's just not a lot of subsoil moisture. So we're going to be very dependent upon what comes to us in the form of rain.
And tying this into the people that watch it, the people that aren't working in agriculture, but there is a ripple effect of grain prices going up, of the feed that goes to hogs and beef and the things that we buy for our dinner table. Has the price of grain gone up over the last several months because of the drought and maybe the anticipation of a continuation of it?
Well, In a short answer, no. And the reason I'm saying this is because a short crop generally has a long tail, which means it peaks early and it just trails off. Now, we've been coming down ever since last summer in our price of grain. Well, we probably had $8.50 for corn, and currently it's right around $7. But it's been down as low as $6.60 or something like that. A lot of the people have left the grain market as far as traders go, and they're concentrating on stocks right now, and stocks are rising, and the commodities are just kind of just sitting there waiting to see what kind of programs we're going to have instituted. Like one of the programs is crop insurance. We have to wait to find out what the price of December corn is during the month of February. Then that sets the price for crop insurance for that year. And then farmers make decisions whether they're going to plant corn or soybeans. So a lot of these decisions are still in the process of being made. Quite honestly, the price of grain helps to make some decisions, but also the prospects for rain help as well.
You know, over years past, we've heard, over the last 30 years, there's times when farming was in desperate trouble, and I seem to remember some years ago the price of corn, which I don't follow very closely, was about $4.50 a bushel. You were saying it's now in the $8 a bushel area? Or?
Well, last summer with the drought, it did get up to about 8.5. And currently, even new crop corn is probably $5.50. It's a lot less than the old crop corn that we're holding on to. But again, a lot of these decisions, just as an example, in 2005, we probably needed $400 an acre gross just to break even. Right now, we're closing in on $900 an acre gross. So you can see the volatility in a change of price of fertilizer, chemicals, land prices, seed corn. What happens overseas? Is the value of the dollar going up or going down? Are we exporting grain, or are we producing more ethanol? Are we feeding a lot of livestock? Those things have a big impact on the grain prices that we have, and we have to anticipate which is going to work best for us on our operation.
One of the stories that we've done, the Illinois Channel did over the last year, where we showed some buyers from some of the Asian countries out here on a farm in Auburn, walking the field, looking at soybeans. To what extent, and again, you're the chairman of the National Corn Growers Association, although you're right here in Auburn, just outside of Springfield, to what extent are farmers keyed into those foreign markets, and what economic role does the growing of grain here in Illinois have on, say, our international trade?
Well, it's very important because of the situation and the location. You know, it's location, location, location. In real estate, well, it's the same way in exports. We are very fortunate to have rivers on the west, the Mississippi River. We have the Illinois River that goes right down the middle of the state, and then the Ohio River on the eastern portion, southeastern portion of the state. And because we have these river systems, we export over 50% of our corn and soybeans overseas, probably more so than any one other state, because we generally have a good volume of grain to move, and because of our location. Normally, we are exporting about 2 billion bushel of corn. We've been as high as almost 2.5 billion, and currently we're at 1 billion, roughly about 1 billion bushel of exports. Now, that is due to the high price of grain, demand destruction because of the high price of grain. The drought really created a major problem for us, but I hate to lose markets, and exports are so important to us. We work with our sister organization known as the Grains Council, and they have offices in practically every country overseas where they try to develop sales of our grain products. And currently DDGs, that's a product, dry digestible grain solubles, that comes out of the ethanol process, is in high demand by livestock feeders worldwide. So a lot of these things are effect on the price, the availability, and our ability to move the product to the market.
When one of the things I know you and I have talked about as well is the fact that we move so much of the grain down the Mississippi, and that has to go through a lock and dam system. And one of the things, as I said, you had mentioned is the fact that the lock and dam over in the Quincy area is not up to speed. It's past its shelf life, so to speak, when it was made. How old is that lock and dam, and how concerned should we be as Illinoisans about the condition of that structure?
Well, I'll tell you what. One of the ones that's starting to fall into the river right now is near Lockport, Illinois. And unfortunately, these locks and dams were built 70 years ago to last 50. So they're already 20 years over their useful life. And we are working through Washington, D.C., with all of our lobbyists from the multiple states through corn growers and soybeans and wheat, and we work with the labor unions and environmental groups such as Nature's Conservancy to pass the authorization to build 5 new locks on the Mississippi down near the lower end, and 2 on the Illinois, which would be LaGrange and Peoria. We have the authorization, we just don't have the appropriations, and money is some pretty tough thing to come by these days. And so
What kind of money are you talking about to have that?
we're talking about $2 billion roughly for all 7 locks, but that also will include some environmental remediation of problems that have been caused by this excessive floods we've had in the last few years and in the drought this year.
As far as the funds, is there any kind of a toll, almost like toll roads? Is there a charge per the barges going through so that over a period of 50 years, once you build these lock and dams, that they would be self-sustaining financially?
Well, we're in the process, and it's called an inland waterway barge fee, and what it boils down to is paying so much a gallon for diesel fuel. But a lot of that money is to build up a fund to build locks with. See, one thing that the majority of the American people don't realize, the Army Corps of Engineers is in charge of making sure there's a 9-foot draft along the Mississippi and the Illinois rivers. And also, we as customers who use those, we pay this Inland Waterway Trust Fund fee, and that is about 20 cents a gallon on fuel. When these locks are built, the users, that would be myself with grain, we're paying for half the lock building. So essentially, due to these Inland Waterway Trust Fund fees, we're going to raise $1 billion to pay for our half of building these locks, and the other half comes from the federal government.
If that money is not appropriated, at what point will that become a crisis problem?
Well, in the eyes of some, it's a problem right now. This infrastructure, it's just kind of like trying to drive a Model A Ford down I-55. Well, you get run over, you cause all kinds of accidents, and that's just really what we have right now. We have 600-foot locks, and most of the barge traffic is about 1,200 foot in length. And what we're trying to do is when we replace these 5 locks on the Mississippi and 2 on the Illinois, is to replace them with 1,200-foot locks so that we can cut down on the time that it takes to get through the process. And the whole purpose of this is to be a reliable supplier of grain, not only to our own country, but to those overseas. And earlier, believe it or not, 60% of all the corn up to these last few years that has been purchased overseas comes out of the United States. And because we have been slow in upgrading our infrastructure, because of this major drought we had this last year, we're slipping on that. And Brazil and Argentina are trying to pick up the pace and become the exporter of choice.
So for the United States to remain competitive on the world stage, as far as moving our grain out, you're saying that it's critical that we get these lock and dams built?
Absolutely. And it's sooner rather than later.
And let me throw up my mind out. I want to go back to what you're going to say, but the thing is, was it $10 billion? How many dollars in trade do?
We had $10 billion worth of corn leave the United States a year ago.
Okay, so that's $10 billion. It's going to cost about $2 billion to build all 7 locks and dams. Is that what you said?
Well, let's get back to the whole part of agriculture.
My thought is, if this is a 50-year shelf life, I mean, it would seem to be, just running the numbers, kind of a no-brainer that you want to invest that money because it's going to allow you, one of your main industries, to continue to export and make a profit on the world stage.
Absolutely, Terry, but the whole point is we're just one segment. There's coal, soybeans, fuel, nitrogen, rock salt for Chicago. When you take all of the agriculture products that is exported out of the United States, it's $136 billion a year ago. And of that, we had $40 billion that came back as above the balance of trade. It's a real no-brainer to upgrade our system so we can be competitive with other places around the world. You know, we're going to be watching the Panama Canal come online real quick, and we're not even prepared to upgrade to be able to have the capacity to meet that. That's going to cut off dramatically the time frame it takes to move our products from here to China, for example.
Yeah, again, we were talking just the fact that here the Panama Canal, the Panama's rebuilding their locks and dams because obviously that's so much of their economy is dependent upon that trade or the traffic moving through there. On the lock and dams, not to spend all of our time on this, but is that an ag? I mean, I know it's an ag issue, but as you were saying, it's also all other commodities like coal and other jet fuel and stuff. So is it more of an ag issue or is it a transportation issue? And so who in the federal government, whose door are you knocking on to try to get something to happen on that? Is it Ray LaHood as Transportation Secretary? Is it the Ag Secretary, or just who do you go to?
Well, actually, we go to the Pentagon, believe it or not, to the Army Corps of Engineers. They're the ones in charge of doing this. It is part transportation, but it's not exactly what would come under the purview of Ray LaHood. This is part of the Army Corps of Engineers are in charge of maintaining, building, and keeping this system open. So we've had a lot of time we've spent in Washington, D.C., but you know, the sad part of it is the American people have to understand that the strength of your country lies in your natural resources, the intelligent development of them, and the ability to move those products through the infrastructure that you create. And that's where we're kind of coming to a screeching halt. We have the ability to produce more corn. We've proved it. We've gone from 7 billion bushel in 2006 all the way up to about 14 billion a year ago before this drought came in. So we can do it. All we need is the infrastructure to move it.
Yeah, I mean, there's spending and then there's spending. People are always saying stop the spending, but some spending is going to give you a return on your investment. And if, in that case, the locks and dams were crumbling and unable to accommodate the barges anymore, it would have a tremendous negative economic impact on our balance of trade.
With the direction you're going there, also, you're going to put a lot of trailer trucks back on the highways, which
it's going to tear up the roads.
Going to tear up the roads, plus slow traffic down. See, this is our secret weapon. We have these barges that travel up and down the Illinois Mississippi River. Nobody knows anything about them because they're out of sight, out of mind.
So are you getting stiff-armed, or is the Army Corps of Engineers moving expeditiously?
The Army Corps of Engineers is like every other government agency. They run out of money, and we've taken a lot of the money that we've had built up to build these new locks just to keep them operational in these last few years.
So I'm sorry, you said they ran out of the money, or?
They have not had it appropriated to a sufficient level. We're working right now on a WARDA bill, Water Resources Development Act. I'm told to say the words, what WARDA stands for, in this 2013 bill. Hopefully we're going to be able to get some funding, some appropriations to make our authorization, which we did back in 2007, work. It's just a slow process.
You know, and by the way, we get hung up. I know when I was covering the Congress with C-SPAN, there's two different terms people should be aware of. One is authorization, one is appropriation. And I used to tell people the authorization is kind of like writing a grocery list and saying, this is what you're authorized to spend the money on. But you can't spend the money until, say, maybe Dad comes out and says, here's $100 to go buy those things on the list. So
you said it very appropriately, Terry. Authorization, an unfunded mandate. Appropriation makes the authorization work.
right. So as far as getting that money, now would that be in what piece of legislation? Would it be in the Farm Bill? Would it be in
No.
in what?
It'd be under the WARDA bill, the Water Resources Development Act. And quite honestly, they used to have a WARDA bill every 2 years up until about 2000, and then they went till 2007 without one. And everybody has higher priorities, but you can't put this off much longer because, you know, it's also a national
I was going to say, this sounds like it would be something that if you're a Republican or Democrat, you would easily want to support this because it just makes economic sense. Everyone knows we have to move our commodities up and down the rivers. We've been, I mean, doing it for 200 years. St. Louis is where it is because it's right at the confluence of the Missouri and the Mississippi. The rivers have long been our highways for transport. Is the White House behind this, or where, I know you go to Washington a lot and talk with the powers that be, so what are you hearing?
Well, I will tell you that we've been very fortunate to have most everyone in the Illinois delegation, both sides of the aisle, House, Senate, support us on locks and dams. But you have to understand, this is a big country with 50 states, and not everybody else understands the importance of our lock and dam system to get passage. However, because we worked so diligently back in 2007 for authorization, we had 406 congressmen and 83 senators sign on. So it's not impossible. We can get it done. It's just going to take a lot of arm twisting. And, you know, when you're handcuffed with things like a fiscal cliff, a debt ceiling, excessive spending, all these other things that are a lot of social programs, like what are we going to do with immigration? What about the military? These things all have been getting in the way of us getting our message across.
Lastly on this topic, you got $2 billion to build. I think you said 7, wasn't it? What about, could you get by with less money and do it on a graduated basis? Or?
Well, that's where we are right now. We're trying to just get one lock on the Illinois and one lock on the Mississippi started. Because even if we had the appropriations, it'd probably be another 5 years before they could get started on it.
5 years before you could get started?
Yeah.
And why would that be?
Well, it's because of the backlog currently. They're still trying to finish up on the Ohio River, a big lock project, and it's sucking all the money out of our what we're trying to accomplish with our new locks.
Would any of the money come from the state of Illinois?
I think the state of Illinois would be hard-pressed to do that. But what we need...
That's why I thought if we have to come up with matching dollars, that might be
no, this is a federal project. But what will really be helpful is if the governor and a lot of our Congress, our state representatives and state senators express to the rest of the Illinois delegation how important it is. That would be huge.
And I would think it's not going to hurt the fact that Dick Durbin is the #2 senator in the U.S. Senate, that he would be aware of this. And
oh, he's been very aware and very helpful. Our whole Illinois delegation has been very helpful of this. And
this doesn't sound like a partisan issue at all.
No,
it seems like something.
No, actually, we have had a U.S. senator. I think his name was Barack Obama, and he is very much aware of what's going on too. So I think if the money is there, if we can find some way to make this work, I think we're going to try to get these locks and dams moved to a higher priority so we can get it done.
You know, before we close out, we just recently interviewed brand new Congressman Rodney Davis, and we asked what his priorities were, and he said one of the things was to pass a farm bill. And by the way, he's on the Transportation and Agriculture Committee, so I would think he would be key for both of these issues we'd be talking about. On the farm bill, for those of us who, again, are not working in agriculture, what is the purpose of a farm bill? What would it do, and what problem is it causing by not having it?
Well, it's kind of like a roadmap. It's the assurity of where we're going with what we're doing. We had a renewable fuel standard. It set out so many years of knowing how many incremental means of gaining to achieve a certain goal. The same way with a farm bill. The dairy provisions, they really don't know whether they can continue to grow, or should they cut back, or what kind of a process is going to take place. As a farmer in central Illinois, what concerns me most is where will we be with crop insurance? We won't know some of these things until after the February time frame, but how am I going to position my farm to be successful and profitable into the future? And that's the reason we have these large, long-term 4 to 5 year farm bills, so that we can make decisions and not just be shooting from the hip each and every year. Should I plant more corn? Should I plant more soybeans? How does this all work out together? What's the future hold for me? So it's the assurance of what kind of a program is available for us.
You know, I know you always have to walk a line politically. There are certain things you want to champion, other issues you'd probably rather stay away from. But one of the contentious issues, as I understand it, with the Farm Bill is that we've had an explosion of the amount of money being spent on food stamps. And I don't remember the exact number, but it's, what is it, something like 60 or 70% of the Farm Bill is food stamps?
Well, you're almost there. It's 80%.
80%. Should we segregate that and say, look, food stamps is one thing, our farmers, our grain farmers, our beef growers is really a whole different aspect of agriculture. I mean, as a farmer, is it fine the way it is, or should that be segregated?
Well, I'll step over the politically correct line and tell you, for us to pass the Farm Bill, we need to have the food stamp provisions, because a lot of the reason we didn't get a Farm Bill is because in the House, there was a proposal to reduce the SNAP, Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, by $16 billion over a period of 10 years. And most of the House members did not want to go home to vote on that before the election. Unfortunately, another kicking the can down the road. But for us to pass Farm Bill, most of the people who are on the SNAP program are in the larger cities. Most of the farmers are in smaller communities. And that's the reason it's been put together all these years. And it just hasn't been as big of a problem as it has been recently. Unfortunately, 47 million Americans are on food stamps or the SNAP program currently.
Well, Gary Niemeyer, we'll end it here, and thank you again for joining us on the Illinois Channel.
Well, it's so exciting to have the opportunity to express what we are looking at from the farming community, and to kind of interact with our city folk friends so that we understand what they want to know about what's going on in agriculture. This is a great opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity being on this board and really look forward to getting the message out.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.